To order the regular governing board meeting of the Jefferson Elementary School District for October 23rd, 2019.
Sorry.
May I please? May I please get members present?
Shaquille Ali.
Here.
Marie Brizuela is not present. Maybell Manio.
Here.
Manufo Leah Inga Anuai is not present. Clayton Koo.
Present. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I think we have a student who wants to lead tonight.
All right.
Did I just say, yeah? Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're here.
Next is item 4, governance team meeting guidelines. Governance team members will review the governance team meeting guidelines. Next is the approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
First and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next is special presentations. Today's Future Sound Therapeutic Beat Making. Elliot Gann, Executive Director, and Marlon Richardson, Instructor and Mentor at Today's Future Sound, will share about their program, which serve middle school students in the Jefferson Elementary School District in the 2018-2019 school year. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you folks?
Good.
We're doing well.
Good evening. Hi all, I'm Dr. Elliot Gann. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and executive director of Today's Future Sound. We're a nonprofit organization based in Oakland, California, and we had the pleasure of working with Stephanie Martinez and Luisa here, who brought us in and found us via the interwebs. And we had the pleasure of coming in and working at 4 of your wonderful JEST schools last year. We're going to present to you briefly this evening on therapeutic beat making, which is the core model and program that we present and have delivered in JESD for JESD schools. Today's Future Sound uses the power of hip-hop music and culture to address a lack of culturally responsive and sustaining educational, therapeutic, and social interventions, and I would include in this SEL, socio-emotional learning, for underserved youth, and I would say all youth, in the Bay Area and around the world, in this case in Daly City and JESD. What is the therapeutic beat making model? As a licensed clinical psychologist, DJ, beat maker myself, I can attest personally to the power of music, arts, and culture and how that has helped me in terms of a positive developmental trajectory. And I've also seen, having worked with over 75,000 youth across 6 continents, how powerful it can be across cultures, geographic and linguistic lines. This is something that we've also conducted research on. You'll find on the last 2 pages of your packet an article that we had published through a peer-reviewed journal with Dr. Raphael Travis, who's a positive youth development specialist at Texas State University and a professor of social work there, and our collaborator, Dr. Alexander Crook at University of Melbourne in Australia, a specialty researcher in the positive effects, especially emotional, therapeutic of music. So I'm going to spell out for you the therapeutic beat making model, which is introduced in that article and on which we conducted research in JESD as well. The first, I would say, dimension that I propose as being therapeutic is the relationship. And I think we all know this from a pretty common sense perspective. Relationships are transformative. In any form of therapy, the research shows, with all meta-analysis, all the mountain of research shows, that the therapeutic relationship is tantamount. It is the #1 most important factor for positive therapeutic outcome, no matter what the intervention is. All the research shows this. And any good therapist knows this as well. Any good teacher, coach, parent, etc. understands this. When we present something that is culturally responsive, that is familiar to young people, they tend to respond to it more so than something that is archaic or doesn't speak to them. And that's how we develop relationships. So we use the relationship, which in itself is healing. We know this, all the trauma literature shows this as well. Positive relationships are healing and are also buffering factors against trauma and help positive youth outcomes. Secondly, The expressive aspects of music and arts. Again, this is kind of a common sense thing, an intuitive thing that oftentimes folks know, artists know, and other people know. It's not just about quote unquote enrichment. It's about other ways of learning and expressing oneself. And we propose that not only do we get a sense of catharsis or therapeutic release through music, through engaging in the arts, it also downregulates stress response. When I talk about stress response, I'm talking about it could be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and having trauma symptoms or stress responses to stressful situations or reminders of traumatic situations, or complex and developmental trauma, which is a repeated and ongoing, starting in childhood, stressful or adverse childhood experiences. And that interferes with students' capacity to use their cognitive abilities, to think. So instead of using their prefrontal cortex, they are then in fight or flight, freeze, or faint response using their brainstem. This is a survival mechanism. We're getting them back online by regulating them through repetitive rhythms, which put people into light trance-like states. We found this through, Barry Quinn has found this through brain scans, finding that their brain changes from beta waves, which is where you're more focused or alert, to light trance-like states through repetitive rhythms, and that's more alpha waves. The third dimension that we propose is the self-esteem or self-efficacy dimension. When you master something, and this doesn't just have to be beat making or hip hop, anything really, it gives you a sense of confidence, a sense of mastery leads to a sense of confidence, increase in self-esteem, coming closer to your ideal sense of self, but also a sense of efficacy, having agency in the world, the capacity to do something. And that's really important because trauma is being out of control of yourself and the world around you. So even if it's as simple as saying, what drum sound would you like to use? What kick drum out of these 4 sounds? We're giving students choice. Instead of telling them no, we're telling them yes. And we're also asking them to think about themselves and how to process that and express it through something that they like and relate to. So just to give you an idea of what we did in the Mindful Beats Therapeutic Beat Making program, we integrated dynamic mindfulness using some yoga-style poses and guided meditation at the beginning of every session. We asked students to engage in cyclical breathing, again to downregulate stress, but even before this, we did a check-in with students and asked them, how are you feeling today on a scale from 1 to 10? 1 being lowest energy, not feeling so good, 10 being the highest. We're asking students to engage in metacognition, and also, this is SEL practice, thinking about one's own internal state. Then, giving them strategies to downregulate their stress through breathing. We're bringing this in at the beginning of class, and then we're moving to small beat-making groups, myself and Mr. Richardson here, teaching, along with other instructors, students how to make their own beats, and asking them for their creative input. We're also helping them make their own original songs, which lead to original albums, and I'll show you the album covers in a minute. It also culminated in final performances as well, which came at the art fair, as well as some assemblies, and also putting out a final album that goes on our website and is accessible for free to students and community members. The groups were led by myself and by Mr. Richardson here, who is also a proud parent of JST students at one of the schools, FDR, where we were at. I'm not, oh, here we go. Here's some video footage of Tony from TRP performing. Assembly where they got up on stage and made a beat live. In terms of impact and outcomes, how am I doing for time, by the way? Okay, I'm not watching the time either, so I'll try to get through this quickly. Y'all have this in your packets as well. We delivered, as you saw, the interactive student assembly for grades 5 through 8 at FDR. The program was twice a week, and the reason that that's important is because the higher the frequency, the higher the efficacy in terms of developing relationships, giving kids and students a place to process their emotions, to learn, write, recall, memory learning, etc. And we were working with 30-plus students in intensive therapeutic beat-making groups, usually with 3 instructors, sometimes 4 at a time, usually with 2 to 3 students per group. That's really important for fostering relationships and hands-on, experiential, project-based learning. We provided also some one-on-one therapeutic beat-making sessions, Mr. Richardson did, with students who would be considered high needs. Is that tier 1, or am I thinking tier 3? Tier 3. Tier 3 students. One student in particular I'm thinking of really was struggling and acting out in a lot of ways, but when he came into our classroom, I never ever saw this student act out once because he was highly engaged. And when he had one-on-one sessions, we saw he was also highly engaged. It was quite effective. Additionally, we had an end-of-year workshop at FDR for an additional 12 students. We found in some of the preliminary data and research findings, a majority of students found dynamic mindfulness and guided meditation useful in terms of increasing school engagement and positive impact on academic outcomes. They self-reported, they said, I'm doing better in school, I'm more able to focus, and I'm more interested in coming to school and in school in general. Several students reported using dynamic mindfulness and guided meditation to process and cope with difficult or challenging events in their life, whether outside of school or inside of school, family, etc. 95% of students surveyed would choose to participate in the group again this year. I literally had one student at TRP who was begging us to come back and that he could come back, and participate again. Just a couple quick anecdotes. I interviewed one student's father at TRP, another student who was quite disengaged, was struggling academically in school, and his father reported that finally he was coming home and talking to his father instead of going straight to his room. They had something to talk about, and he was excited about something at school, whereas he really found school not very interesting, not exciting, and wasn't very engaged academically or at all, really. Several parents reported that their children listened to music differently. They developed critical listening skills, and were able to use vocabulary in a way that the parents didn't know what they were talking about. Mom, can you hear the snare drum on that song? I've heard this from multiple parents, listening to the radio, listening to pop songs and hip hop songs. I said, what are you talking about? The drum, can you hear the snare drum, right? So they're listening to and engaging with the music differently. It gives them a sense of mastery and efficacy. Another student at FDR reported that he taught dynamic mindfulness and guided meditation to his sisters, and they practiced it every morning before school, and it decreased, we'll say, sibling conflict. Another student reported that he used the breathing techniques that we taught them. I've actually heard this from several students to help him calm down when he had a fight with his parents instead of throwing things around his room. He said, I did the cyclical breathing exercises we started with every session, and I found it very helpful. I'll just have you look at quickly, these are the album covers for the student albums that were produced. And these are available for free download and stream on SoundCloud and Bandcamp. We also gave physical copies of them to each of the students. So it's a physical takeaway. I've had students that we've taught in middle and high school, who we taught before that in elementary school, say to me, I still have that CD. We don't give them CDs anymore because that's outdated. But I still have that CD from 4 years ago. It makes a major impact and it goes a long way. With this, I present to you Mr. Joaquin Villanueva.
Alright, so did I just say this on here? Alright. Okay. I enjoy this program because it gave us a chance to be creative and express ourselves through music. The program helped me after school by knowing that, how people created music, and I have another interest. And during school, it helped me focus when I thought about the beats I made. And I think this program is good for schools because it allows students who enjoy music to learn it better and do more stuff with it. And it can help other students who aren't really into music focus more.
I'd also like to call to the floor Marlon Richardson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody feeling?
Good.
We're good?
Yep.
Good. I'm here just to provide anecdotal evidence as to hip-hop and the power therein. Over the last 46 years, what we've seen hip-hop do, starting as a party in the Bronx to a multi-billion-dollar industry that employs hundreds of thousands of people, is a testament to the transformational nature of this artwork, of this culture, of this art form. Me, as a kid myself, I was born and raised in New York City. I was labeled learning disabled and at risk by age 12 and 13.
through hip hop and through educational and performing arts, I graduated at the top of my class by high school. And currently I'm an adjunct professor of hip hop at Holy Name Jewish University, where they're offering a hip hop class as a sociology class for the first time in the university's history. So I'm a living testament to the proof of not only hip hop as a culture and art form being beneficial in terms of dealing with trauma and dealing with anger, but also its ability to create community, which is what I think, in my experience as a senior instructor with Today's Future Sound, is what we're truly doing with the youth that we're serving. We're providing a space for creativity, and for that creativity to be the conduit for community and transformation individually and collectively. So it was a joy of mine to be going from school to school, and being a parent of JESD students. I have a vested interest in the education of not only my kids, but the kids that surround my kids. Right. I always tell people, even when I train teachers, I say, know who your co-teachers are. Your kids' friends are co-teachers. Instagram is now becoming a co-teacher in one way or another. Right. But if we're giving them the language, the faculty, and the resources to convey their thoughts and to share their thoughts and their emotions in a safe space where they can take their anger and put it into a beat, where they can take their anger and use lyrics to articulate their frustrations or even their joys, I think you start to see the equity that they have in their own lives. And that is the basis for the transformation and the transcendence to occur. So I appreciate your time. Thank you guys so much.
Stephanie, if we could, perhaps we could play one or two of the tracks from the album. As I mentioned, this is available for free download. This is something we encourage students to share if they have social media, to share it on social media. This one is called Laser Laser, which is from TRP. It was Nate, Jared, Gabe, and Drake.
Laser, laser. Laser, laser. Laser, laser beam. Laser, laser. Laser, laser.
So that's a little snippet of Laser Laser. That was original lyrics composed together as a group, collaboratively, creatively, etc. They composed that. And it also involved some basic audio engineering, recording, thinking about mixing. So we're also employing here, this is STEAM. Not just STEM, but STEAM, because it's integrating the arts, right? And so we're teaching them, we're giving technical literacy, thinking about career pathways. What can you do with digital music production? You can act as an audio engineer, a live audio engineer, a studio engineer. Those are two different things. Doing events or being in the studio, thinking about performing as, Mr. Villanueva did at the art fair, right? And then also performing in the studio for other folks. So there's different pathways we can think about. Math, science, STEM, it's all implicit. It's all baked in there, but in a culturally responsive, and I would say developmentally responsive way, where it's kind of like a gummy vitamin, if you will. We're giving them the good stuff, but in a way that's more appealing. I would also just encourage you to take a look, if you haven't already, at our materials here, the one sheets that we have in the packets, which introduce the therapeutic beat-making model, which I defined for you and kind of spelled out a little bit, and also our general program model. I've also included the first 2 pages of the article, which is empirical and quantitative evidence that shows that indeed the therapeutic beat-making model is effective in addressing anxiety and depression. And we literally have done research within your school that we're still finalizing the collection of and the analysis of, which we expect to be hopefully analyzed and put into journal articles hopefully in the next year or so, maybe even before that. But we want to thank you also for letting us conduct this research, because this is pilot and innovative research that's going to better inform our practice. We hope that we'll be able to return this coming school year. I think that it really offers a special opportunity to a lot of youth, and hopefully the youth's testimonial speaks to that. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
You could go first.
Thank you for your presentation. We really appreciate you coming and being with our students, enjoying this. I'm a am absolutely a firm believer in creative therapy, and especially music therapy. So I love that there is that yoga mindfulness component with you guys, and that sense of release of tension for the students through these creative avenues. I actually used to manage a nonprofit with exactly this, with beats, and we did singing, DJing. But there was an entrepreneurship component to it too, which I'm sure you guys would appreciate if that could be added. Not that I'm telling you how to do your job, but
I think it's an excellent suggestion, and we do, I'll let Mr. Richardson speak to this, but we do try to integrate that in as well.
Yes, so the students that were in my program, this was years ago, are actively working in the industry, and I've even hired some of them out for different events too. And I think adding that and having that entrepreneurial business sense for these students can absolutely add to the mastery, the efficacy, and give them that that kind of even more approval of themselves when they know that they can actually make money off of something fun that they're doing. But again, thank you so much. I hope you do come back to our district and work with especially our middle school kids.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. I'm very impressed and very happy to see this program. I'm surprised that I didn't know anything about this, but I know now, right? So that's good.
And that's what counts, right?
Right.
As G.I. Joe said, knowing is half the battle, right?
That's true. So I actually do this. I'm currently a teacher, high school teacher, and I just recently just put on GarageBand and let my students start making beats during class. And I've seen a transformation in that class. We've only been doing this since last week. So it's interesting for me to now see research to back up, what I'm doing, because I know that it's therapeutic. The other thing that I like was you mentioned where it fits into the multi-tier system of services. Could you talk a little bit more about that? You said there was something going on at the tier 3 level.
Yeah, so what we said coming in, and then also at the end of the program, what we kind of found is that, and this is pretty typical for therapeutic interventions, I find usually, tier 3 typically are going to need individualized services. They don't tend to do usually well in group settings. I think that our student was an exception to that, perhaps. Although he did also receive one-on-one services. Unfortunately for this young man, who's a lovely young man, he was in some as most of our students who were kind of in that tiering, in an unfortunate situation and dealing with a lot of trauma, community violence, I think intergenerational trauma, that led him to act out. But I think that most tier 3 students benefit more from individualized services, whereas tier 1 and tier 2 tend to do all right in the group setting and don't need as much immediate attention from moment to moment. But really, when you're dealing with high levels of trauma and traumatic stress, you're going to have these kind of hypervigilant acting out behaviors that really need to be contained and need individual attention for the adult to help the child or the student to downregulate themselves and give them that active attention that probably they weren't able to receive from parents who are also experiencing stress and trauma.
Okay. So a student in that situation, you let them make a beat on their own, or what?
Perhaps you want to speak to this really briefly. We give them individualized sessions when possible, and maybe you want to speak briefly about that.
No, very shortly, it's kind of a micro version of the therapeutic beat making model. The option of making beats is available to them, but for the most part, we kick it. And it's really just a matter of them buying into the personality and what's being in front of them, not seeming like a teacher, not seeming like an authority figure, just somebody who can relate to them on a very interpersonal level. The representation is very key, especially with populations of color. When you see somebody who looks like you, who kind of dresses like you, but is a little bit older, you have that OG kind of credibility that allows kids to kind of let their guard down.
Yeah.
And then that's where the rapport and that's where the real work can then begin, because you're just using the aspect of creativity as a conduit for them to be able to talk and them to be able to share ideas, and you're giving them that freedom and that equity to just just let it out. Talk about whatever you're wanting to. Talk about what makes you mad. Talk about what makes you happy, without pressing or prodding. And that's been the course of my experience, is just giving them that free rein to just kind of express themselves. And if they want to be creative, the option's available for them.
I would also just add that we've been running, and Mr. Richardson has been a key part of the juvenile detention program that we've been doing in Alameda County for the past, I want to say, you've been there for
Almost 2 years.
2 years, and we've been doing it for about 4 years. We just got a $30,000 grant from the California Arts Council to expand our program. And we're now teaching also in the girls unit, the 2 max units, and
Good.
what was the third unit I'm forgetting about? Oh, it's the younger max
Yes,
unit.
yeah.
Yeah, and we found that to be, I mean, you found with Unit 5 it to be highly effective. Right?
Highly effective. It's the one program that they look forward to.
They'll
than
do
any
it.
other program.
Volunteer. So another thing that I noticed that I think is good is that you address some of the other elements of hip hop in there with the graphic arts. Did you do anything with dance or fashion, or was it just all beat making and graphic arts?
It was primarily focused on beat making. If students wanted to write lyrics or sing or record, as you heard, they had the option of doing that. Look, I'm always going to tell someone to dance if they want to dance.
All right.
Right? Hip hop is a culture with 5 elements, you know, with dancing, b-boying, b-girling, breaking, DJing, which includes beat making, MCing, which is the writing, rapping, and performing, graffiti, and knowledge, of course, right? And knowledge, in hip hop culture, that means knowledge of self, knowledge of culture. And that doesn't, you know, it means really knowing who you are, like where you come from, who you are as a person, you know, your background, but also who you are. And so I think we really tried to flesh those 5 elements out.
All right.
We didn't per se have an instructor, any B-boys or B-girls coming in,
Right.
because we had limited kind of, we're trying to get in both the dynamic mindfulness, guided meditation, and get them on the equipment making beats. But that's something that I think we're always open to and interested in, given the time and the resources. Because hip hop is about finding who you are and what suits you best and what style of learning you use best and
Yeah.
what your thing is. So to me, that would be natural, and I'd love to see that in the future.
So, like my colleague said, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but there's a lot of students that love dance at TRP. So you could probably collaborate with the dance teacher and that whole program.
That would be fantastic, and I think really great at the art fair as well.
There you go. Okay, a little bit more. Sorry, everybody.
No, you're good.
It's one of my favorite topics, right? So focus. I heard focus come up a lot from you and from the students. So could you talk a little bit more about the research that you did and, you know, on focus and, you know, how
Yeah,
that
so,
relates to it?
You know, different people define focus different ways, but I think we all have an understanding of essentially meaning being able to bring in one's attention, right, and really laser in on something and not get distracted perhaps by whether it be kind of free associative thoughts, stimuli in the surrounding environment. When we're talking about young people and folks that have been exposed to trauma, there tends to be a lot of hypervigilance. What was that over there? Because if you've been exposed to trauma, if you don't know when that next shoe's going to drop or, you know, something bad is going to happen, you tend to be scanning your environment. And you tend to be running off your brainstem and survival mechanisms, not thinking, remembering, learning, planning. But when we can downregulate them, right, both with the dynamic mindfulness and guided meditation and the repetitive rhythms, then I believe that enables students to focus more, to use their prefrontal cortex, which is engaged, you know, in learning, processing, short and long-term memory, converting short-term to long-term, and the learning function that we're talking about. And frankly, when you like something, you tend to focus on it.
Focus, yep. Okay. So I just wanted everyone to hear that. And then the last thing
I got you.
is that I liked hearing, you know, people talk about a safe space and being able to communicate. So keep up the great work. I want to see more of this in action somehow and hear it, of course. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I have my business card if you want to talk. We have resources, and be happy to share that with you.
All right, thanks.
I just want to say thank you for presenting tonight as well too. It sounds like a great program, and I think it's so nice to hear like ways that you can actually learn and grow as a person as well, personally as well as academically, but not necessarily having to read a book or go take a test. And I think
Or to be graded on it. I think that's key, and the research shows that that's fundamentally important for student wellness outcomes, to not be graded on it, to do it because you love it and because you're enjoying it as a non-graded, non-academic activity.
Yep.
So thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I want to say a special thank you to Luisa Santos, who found us and brought us in.
Thank you.
And our wonkiness as well. The two of them were absolutely stellar and a pleasure to work with, so thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good to welcome you.
We also have something for Joaquin as well, too, actually.
Yes, well, with that said, I want to present this certificate of appreciation for participation in the flag ceremony and this special presentation. Thank you.
All right.
Cool. Thanks again so much for presenting tonight.
Thank you.
So we're going to continue along. Next item is item 7A, board member acknowledgement and commendations. You good?
Give me my card, too.
I think for me, I was just going to note that this Saturday is Make a Difference Day in Daly City, and there are sites all across the city as well as I know they're building a park in the Bayshore neighborhood. So just want to remind everybody to have time, feel free to volunteer for Make a Difference Day in Daly City on Saturday morning. Next is 7B, correspondence and superintendent comments.
Not too many. Just did get a real quick notice from the County Office of Education saying that they've reviewed and accepted our unaudited actuals. They had no comments or suggestions there, different than what they've made in the past. Also, that this coming Thursday, the 31st, of course, is Halloween and lots of activities at all of our schools. So if any board members would like to visit a particular school and see some kind of a parade or something, you'll have 14 opportunities. And November 1st, the following day, is a non-student day. So.
Thank you. Next is 7C, persons wishing to address the board. This portion of the agenda is available for individuals to comment on or address the board on any issue that is under the board's jurisdiction and not on the agenda. The maximum time allowed for any speaker is usually 2 minutes. Are there any speaker cards on this item? No? Okay. If not, next item is item 8A, consent agenda. The administration recommends approval of the starred items on the rest of tonight's agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Next is item 8G, 2018-2019 CSEA Chapter 233, Contract Renewal Proposal Sunshine and Scheduling a Public Hearing. A public hearing will be held on November 13th, 2019 to receive public input on the CSEA Chapter 233 Contract Renewal Proposal for the 2019-2022 school years. CSEA is proposing to open negotiations on various existing articles and new articles on professional courtesy and employee discipline as specified in the proposal. The administration recommends setting the hearing date, acknowledging the receipt of and direct sunshining and distribution for public review the contract renewal proposal for 2019-2022 by CSEA Chapter 233 as required by the ROTA Act.
I move that we approve the proposal to hold the hearing and sunshine and distributing for public review of the contract renewal proposal for 2019 to 2022 by CSEA Chapter number 233 as required by the ROTA Act.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Next is item H, 2018-2019 JESD response to CSEA Chapter 233, renew proposal sunshine and schedule a public hearing. A public hearing will be held on November 13th, 2019 to receive public input on the district's response to CSEA Chapter 233 contract renewal proposal for the 2019 to 2022 school years. JESD is proposing to open negotiations to update language on various existing articles to reflect recent agreements and current state law and new language for Articles 8 and 14. The administration recommends setting hearing date for public review of the district's response to contract renewal proposal for 2019-2022 by CSEA Chapter 233 as required by the ROTA Act.
I'll let her go.
I move to approve our response to CSEA Chapter 233. Just kidding. I move to approve setting the hearing date, November 13, 2019, for public review of the district's response to the contract renewal proposal for 2019 to 2022 by CSEA Chapter 233, as required by the Road Act.
Second.
First, second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next item is item I, appointment of member to measures I, U, and T Citizen Oversight Committee. The administration recommends the appointment of committee member Marian Seki to the measures I, U, and T Citizen Oversight Committee to fill a vacancy as a representative of a senior citizen group.
Yeah, we've had one member who's decided to step off the Citizen Oversight Committee that now encompasses measures I, U, and T. This is a group that meets at least quarterly to review expenses and make sure that they are in line with bond language that was in the propositions or the measures. And this is the hardest group that it is to find a representative from. And so we told the existing member that they could not leave until they gave us some people that we could talk to that would be willing to replace them. So Ms. Marianne Seki lives in the community. She lives off of Eastmore, and she's willing to serve.
Great. I move that we approve the appointment of community member Marian Seki to the Measure I, U, and T Citizen Oversight Committee.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous.
And thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Next is item 9B, California School Dashboard and Local Indicators. Dr. Heidi Joyner, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, will present on the California School Dashboard and Local Indicators. Good evening.
Good evening. This is my first presentation. And mine is not as exciting as the one before, so.
Sorry.
Right.
I know.
And I can't say I'm a performing artist, but don't sing. So tonight I'm going to talk to you just about the California Schools Dashboard and how we are doing. So just a little overview, the dashboard helps parents and educators identify the strengths and areas of for improvement within our district. And it looks at state and local measures. Tonight, the focus is on the local measures. So this is just looking at what the state measures look like. So on the dashboard, the state measures are based on our CASP scores. And so it looks, it'll look like this when you're looking at the state data. And the gray color dial is for no performance. So we have red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. Blue being the highest performance. So for the local indicators, there are 5. And those 5 indicators are basic conditions, parent engagement, access to a broad course of study, implementation of academic standards, and school climate. And so we ultimately rate ourselves based on these 5 priority areas. So we assess ourselves. So the first priority is focused on appropriately assigned teachers, access to curriculum, aligned instructional materials, and safe, clean, and functional school facilities. So for the 2018-2019 school year, all the teachers had the appropriate authorizations to teach English language learners. We had no vacancies. All students had access to their own copies of standards aligned instructional materials, and all facilities were rated in good repair. Priority 2 looks at the implementation of our state academic standards. And so on the November 13th, I'll be bringing forward the report regarding our CASP and our state test. But we look at data within the district and within our sites and district-wide, and we do use Data Zone, where we can actually see our data and do site and classroom level planning with respect to this data. And we do have a universal screening tool, which is FastBridge, and it helps our teachers to inform their daily practice. So priority 3 is parent engagement. So this priority asks several questions, one of them being seeking input from parents in decision-making, and then how we promote parent participation in programs. And so overall, as a district, we have 2 main parent groups, which would be DLAC, which is our District English Language Advisory Committee, and then we have PAC, which is our Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. And we do have groups of parents who belong to both of these committees. Site-wise, each school site maintains a school site council and an English language advisory committee. And then we also have parent-teacher associations and PTOs at each school. And then PAC, again, is the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee, and they give input into our LCAP. And we just had our second PAC meeting last night. So our fourth priority is priority 6, which is local climate survey. And so each year we take a climate survey that's administered to the students, the faculty, and the parents. And just some highlights from last year's survey. 90% of the students, 41% of the families, and 100% of the staff responded to the survey. 79% of the students felt a sense of belonging and connected to their school, and 76% felt that there was a climate of support for learning. 84% of the staff felt a strong sense of belonging, and 89% believe that there is a positive climate of support for learning. And 97% of the families felt a climate of support for learning, and 94% felt a sense of belonging. And so the sites use this data to help inform their SIPSAs, their site plans, and we at the district level use this data to help inform the LCAP. And then the last priority is access to a broad course of study. And so essentially all of our students have access to English language arts, math, social sciences, science and physical education. At the elementary level, students also have access to visual and performing arts and health that's integrated into their core subject areas. And at the middle schools, the students have access to health through core science courses and options of selecting visual and performing arts and world languages through their elective classes. So essentially, JESD continues to work hard to provide access and opportunity to all of our students, and we're very proud of that. And that ends my
Thank you.
questions.
Any questions or comments from board members?
On the dashboard, was there anything that stood out to you or that you felt that, was a highlight?
I think all areas were a highlight. I mean, it was, especially the climate survey, it was extremely positive, and given that it's given to pretty much everybody in the district, starting at a certain level at the elementary school, it was very, very positive. Students do feel a sense of belonging here, and the staff feels a sense of belonging, and the families feel a sense of welcomeness. So I thought that was great, especially me being new and trying to, get a better understanding. I thought that overall was really great.
Yeah, that stood out to me as well, that those two figures, the 97% and the 94%, that made, I thought that was a good reflection of our community and, what we're striving for here to keep everyone involved.
Yes. And the work that the staff is doing with students.
I have a question about the numbers for the local climate survey. I know that in the past we've tried to find more ways to sort of increase that participation rate. I know that it's always like a goal of the district to try to get up to 100%. I was wondering what you guys had anything you had in mind for this coming school year, because I know last year there was some technical glitches or something like that.
So individual schools do provide incentives, and Ms. Martinez and I have been speaking about looking at a district-wide incentive for sites to try to meet so that we at the district level can provide an extra incentive to students and families. And so we haven't landed up upon what we're going to do, but we are in conversation about that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner, for your presentation. I just had a question about the climate survey for the 11% of the staff that said that it wasn't a positive school environment. Was there an option to say why, and what was it? What was the reason?
I can't answer that because I didn't see that,
Okay.
that piece of it. But I can find out.
Yeah, it's mostly a multiple choice response. There is some opportunity for a short answer. That goes directly to the school sites. It's not aggregated at a district level, so every
okay.
school gets their own information.
Okay. Thank you.
Say thank you. I'm surprised, or not really, not surprised, but I'm happy to see the 94 and 97 caught my attention too, which is, to me, anywhere is pretty rare to get
Yeah.
that high percentage. And it was nice to see that the staff, you had 100%, but even with the families at 90%, that was very impressive. So I think that alone is a great sign. I mean, they don't have to take the survey, but they took value in taking the survey. So I think it just validates that level of engagement, but it also validates how they perceive not just the school climate, but I think how they perceive what is happening in their child's learning environment, and that's their contribution in a small way to give their feedback. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm just thinking of next steps. I mean, are there things that are we looking to add surveys or adding to the climate piece of it? I don't know if they're in, like, I think it was kind of asked already, like, what do you see as next steps? Or
Yeah, and Ms. Martinez, is she still here?
No.
She's not here.
I
We
think I
we
caught her.
did look more closely at the student survey to ask some more questions around
SEL.
SEL, like self-regulation and de-escalation strategies and what they use and what they need, what they find. So we added a couple more questions on that. We also, just to make it more timely and responsive to our needs, added a second administration of a survey for students in the springtime. Counselors and staff use the results of the fall to make activities and plans and modify programs. And we want to be able to see results of any of those interventions and changes and get some feedback before the school year's out. The timeline of these local indicators is a little bit odd. All of this relates to last year's activities. We have to upload this onto the state website by next Friday, and so it's a little bit. It's like 6 months behind, and then the dashboard comes out in
Yeah.
December, which is
And we're a year behind, that's right. I mean, when it's posted, it's a year behind.
yeah,
because
it's
not
last
live.
year's data.
It's not live,
It's
yeah.
6 months old at least.
Yeah.
So I think we're just trying to be able to utilize as much information as we can get from a dashboard to make plans. We have 6 months to implement to see if we can impact the following year's dashboard.
Yeah, thank you. I like hearing that those are some of the pieces for next steps, and it seems to be aligned with the trend that I think we're all seeing with ACEs and the Surgeon General's push. I mean, I just landed and came from a training which was supposed to be focused on CACFP and NSLP, and all the speakers were talking about ACEs, which was interesting to me because it seems like what you're mentioning that you're adding as far as next steps is aligned with that.
And we're also looking into adding questions on equity, 1 or 2 questions around equity.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I'm correct, next item is item 13, Governor's Team Member Comments, Reports, and Board Meeting Reflections. I'll start from my far left. Did you want to say anything?
I apologize for being late. I caught the gentleman that did his presentation outside, and I heard from Ms. Martinez outside that it was a wonderful presentation, so I look forward to catching up on that. I think out of that, I'm sorry, again, sorry, I apologize for being late, but I am glad that I made it and was able to catch your presentation. I think what I did want to mention, I know I had mentioned at our last meeting that the superintendent was going to have a Closing the Achievement Gap meeting on the 18th. He has since changed that. He's going to be focusing on curriculum and actually next steps for closing or coordinating his efforts in closing out several initiatives. So the Closing the Achievement Gap meeting has been postponed. However, aligned with that, there are San Mateo County census meetings going on, and there's always recruitment and interest of securing community members from an education perspective. So if anyone's interested, there are 2 seats. I'm on the county committee, and they did mention there were 2 seats available if anyone from education would like to be a part of that committee and be part of the discussion. On December 12th at the Bayshore Boys and Girls Club, the 4 local Samoan Pacific Islander board trustees, along with our Inglewood representative and Dr. Thompson, who is the only Samoan Pacific Islander. He belongs to ACSA, is that correct? Or ASCA? AXA? So I think he's an assistant superintendent in Southern California, but we will be speaking to census, ethnic studies, with some of the partners that you had, I had listed. Those partners will be part of that panel from San Francisco State and UC Berkeley. And I think it's some of the things we've been trying to do touch points on, but it will be from a Pacific Islander perspective. But I know these are things that we've talked about. We're speaking to census, we're speaking to recruitment and retention of teachers of color, and we're also speaking to CASP and also mental health. So I think it's wonderful, but a lot of this data is coming from San Francisco Unified, and I know that our county superintendent had offered to be supportive of any data, but I also think it's wonderful if our district wants to participate in that in any way. It doesn't have to be specific to our Pacific Islander students, but I think what's wonderful is that we're touching things and themes that we all continue to talk about and hope to promote and highlight. Ethnic studies I'm very interested in because San Francisco State will be doing that presentation that day, and 4 professors will be one from Asian studies, and the other 3 are all Pacific Island studies. So I think it's exciting because I'm hoping that they will come on over and assist your efforts in figuring out how we might be able in some small way kick that off. But I think the flyer will be ready on Friday, and I'll share it with the superintendent. Thank you.
I just wanted to, I know they're no longer here, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciated the therapeutic by Beats group that is working with our students. I think that's really important and such a great program. So I hope that we are able to invite them back this school year and that they are able to come back. I did want to speak to, I know that you just got off a flight and you just got off a flight. So I think that speaks volumes to our board members and our governance team's dedication and their level of commitment to the school district, and how much I appreciate being around people like that show that dedication. And one last thing is, I want to revisit the appointment to the committee that works with the food vendor RFP and see if that was something that needed to be on the agenda or... Okay, perfect. Thank you. Got it. Okay, great. Thanks. Everybody have a great rest of your week.
I just focused on number 1, we will keep our focus on the best interests of our students, and that's it.
Same here. We will keep our focus on best interest of students, and just wishing everybody a happy Halloween as well, too. Next is 14, persons wishing to address the board on closed session items. Are there any speaker cards on this item? Nope, seeing none. We would then convene to closed session. We'll ask for a couple minute recess while we convene to closed session. Thanks.
It's totally